Your enemy grossly underestimated your strength, your agility, your instincts, your resilience, your tactics, your intellect, your overall power. And now, as a result, they have no choice but to retreat. Here on this board, we have cards that have been pulled in the pre-shuffle from my oracle deck. We have retreat, we have glory, we have accelerate, manifestation, inspiration, and at the bottom of the deck, transformation. Someone just didn't know what they were up against. Hell, at some points in times, you might not have even known just how powerful you were, and you still may not. But for a point of reference, each of these cards does represent one of the tarot. Retreat is the 8 of Cups. Glory is the Star. Accelerate is the 8 of Wands. Manifestation is the Magician. And inspiration is the Ace of Wands. 8 of Wands, if I didn't say that correctly. 8 of Wands, Ace of Wands. And transformation, of course, you guessed it, is the Death. All of that power was misread, was misinformed of the enemy or to the enemy, undercalculated. And so therefore, the attacks and the energy that was expended to plan a proper attack have all ultimately failed to achieve the desired outcome or to create the effect or make the impact that it was designed to do so. Not that it wasn't powerful and not that it wouldn't under normal circumstances, but because of the gross miscalculation and underestimation is why now the enemy has no choice but to retreat. And it may not be the last you've heard of them, although hopefully so. But the loss that has been encountered, the damage, the casualties, the injury that has been sustained is so all-consuming that there's just not enough energy or enough allied forces, enough manpower to continue to what's the opposite of retreat? Attack, of course, but advance. There it is, advance. And so on account of all of this, transformation, as I said, is the Death card, is, to me, it reads as like the only term of surrender or ceasefire at this point. And that is literal death and continued loss, devastation at its worst, or change, reformation, and dare I even say, what was the other word I heard? Repentance. That's the only viable term, acceptable term of a peaceful surrender and ceasefire. Otherwise, there will continue to be devastation, casualty, loss, and even actual death incurred by that enemy force until they submit humbly and holistically. All right, so that's the pre-shuffle message. Let's see where we go from here. All right. Page of Cups. So apologies may be in order. Whether or not they're accepted, yeah, that's in question, or up for consideration, but nonetheless they would need to be sincere. And the Page of Cups, it can imply some hint of sincerity or innocence, but sometimes it's questionable to me with that fish in the cup. Like, what is someone really emoting? What are they really saying behind the words? Or even sometimes behind literally the emoting, someone may present themselves in tears, or to be unarmed, or a non-threat, again, innocent. But it's already been established here that there has been some aggression. There has been some intention to cause harm, to create an effect that was unfavorable. So as humbly as someone, or innocently as someone may try to present themselves or to build a case, like I said, it's there may be a cause for remorse and regret at this time, on account of the loss that has been incurred. But to deem that it's like your enemy walking into your camp, hands up, waving the white flag or whatever, like, I'm unarmed, I surrender, I don't want to fight no more. It's like, yeah, are you really going to be secure at that until you've had a chance to pat them down, maybe strip them down, lock them up, or just banish them altogether, not even welcome them into your personal space? I mean, that's up to the decision of the receiver. However, the safest bet is to keep distance, is what I would suggest. Allow that retreat to be indefinite, for the purposes of your own safety and security, and hopefully for the advancement of someone's own or of that energy's transformation in their own safe space and place of security. It doesn't cause for anything, for any it's not what can I say, like, it doesn't, there's a word I'm looking for, not negate, but it's like, it's not necessary for there to be a point of connection, particularly when you think of two sides at odds, even at war perhaps, or in some type of disagreement. You don't necessarily have to align forces or join to have a common understanding. Everyone can go to their respective corners. Respectful is the word, actually. And restore, revive, and move on accordingly. So there's that. No matter how sincere the offering may be, the expression may be, as far as this beginning message is concerned, there's more than likely still a cause for distance and strong boundaries. Oh, that was a 10 of Swords. Yeah, there's been some betrayal here. And you can't just heal that overnight, if ever. No matter how sorry someone may present themselves to be. Betrayal cuts deep. It wounds deep, because in order for you to really be betrayed by somebody, it has to be someone that you considered close or intimate to you anyway. Otherwise, a stranger on the street can't really betray you. Someone, even just a casual acquaintance, can't really betray you. They may disappoint you or surprise you, but betrayal, that's close to home. Oh, King of Cups, very close to home. This could have been a partner, a lover, a very intimate friend, someone that you trusted dearly, deeply, someone that presented themselves to be non-threatening, maybe even expressed themselves to love you and care about you and your well-being, to have a certain, a certain best interest at heart for you, well-meaning, all of that. Hold on, let me see what's after this King of Wands. Let me get one between the king and the page, because that's a major jump. It could be, like I said, someone that has had intimate access to you over time, a long period of time, where it's a matured relationship or connection, or it had depth, at least on one side. What that was. Let me see what's between this King of Cups and page. Ooh, not no more. No more. And it's also given, like I said, sometimes like relationships that are closest to you can do the most damage, because they know you the best. They know what makes you tick. They know exactly how far to push the envelope to make an impression, but also, maintain a distance where, they can maintain that facade of security, where you would never, close enough that you wouldn't think that someone that has had this level of access, or this intimate access to you, would ever cross you a certain type of way, or whatever harm you or hurt you. You would almost be blind to the fact, until, of course, you aren't. And usually that's after it's far too late to, well, I won't say far too late, because it's never too late to erect boundaries. But usually some damage has been done. Some line has been crossed before you realize a boundary is necessary. All right, let's see here. But it's given that that's not there. The Two of Swords in this case is given like someone can't really overstep that line anymore. They don't really have, which may, right under retreat, may actually be the reason why, like maybe someone is having to go back to the drawing board, or go lick their wounds because they've been rejected, or they're not able to advance the way that they had plans to do so. They're having to concede even, maybe even consider change, as I said, and transformation in a productive sense. Maybe actually considering, the error of their ways. Like, why am I like this? Why did I do this? What brought me to, how did we get here? And may be compelled to actually do something about it, maybe to actually grow up, to mature into their whole self, emotionally, even so, more than anything. And I'm gonna keep going, but I had a download yesterday just randomly when it was about like, how is it that folks can become so possessed to do things that they know are just like harmful and hurtful with no conscience that regulates that. And it was clear to me that, especially on account of, I think it was yesterday's message where the devil came up, I think like second out the deck. It's something about those, like one of the contractual agreements, whether it's known or unknown at the time, when people make are become entangled, when people become entangled with lower frequencies, dare I even say make deals with the devil, theoretically speaking, you lose your sensibility. It's like it's either surrendered or it's like it's captivated in some way in that exchange where you either don't really have a conscience at the time of that when that agreement is active and alive and well, or it's like for that time span you don't really get to feel the condemnation or you don't even have an instinct of consequence, especially in an emotional sense, about what you're doing. All that you can really, it's like all of that is like debris for a demonic force to kind of like clear out the way for you so that you can keep championing its agenda. Don't even think about how wrong that is or how you would feel if it happened to you, or what the consequences might be, or how hurt that person might be if they found out or whatever. Like, don't even think about that. Just do this because this is the outcome. This is the desirable outcome, and if you don't do this, you can't have that. So it's like a temporary high or numbing, or intoxication, maybe even actually, coupled with the physical aspect of that through some vice, whether it be drugs or alcohol or, some satisfaction of overindulgence, let's say, for the time being, which subsequently kind of takes the place of remorse and well, just generally conscience. It kind of takes up that space so that you don't even fuss around about it. And then all of a sudden, usually I think that either when the deal falls out, the bottom falls out, or is breached or unfulfilled, or even when that end of the bargain is completed, is suddenly when all of those, I really feel like it's when the bottom falls out, especially in the way that I'm speaking about it here, because I feel like with the devil energy, the better you perform, the more rewarded it proposes to, the more rewards it proposes uh, to disperse or dispense. And then there's another assignment and another assignment, and the more that you are willing to complete until you ultimately crash out, is the more fluid the exchange may be, or the more entangled you become, whichever, probably a little bit of both. But it's when that bottom falls out, and as it is here, when you hit that brick wall, when you were misinformed, perhaps by the intel that you were receiving, yeah, you got this, all you got to do is this, and you can seize that property, you can seize that being, you can take their identity, you can take their destiny, you can assume it for your own, you can reroute their fate and fortune to you. You like all these, visions of grandeur that are projected to you, like I said, as the optimal result for just a small fee or small sacrifice of X, Y, and Z. When that doesn't come to pass, because it was probably never supposed to in the first place, it was an insurmountable feat, that's when suddenly one may come to their senses, and what was blocked or numb or disassociated before all of a sudden is quite clear and plain, almost um, overwhelming to a degree, where everything comes rushing in suddenly and you're like, oh my God, like when you come to at a crime scene and you're looking at the blood on your hands, like, oh my God, look at this, and what's that, the Fool underneath? Yes, yeah, the Nine of Wands, and what's that, the Empress. The Nine of Wands here, when it all comes rushing back to you, like, damn, what did I just do? Like maybe that possession is kind of a blackout moment of sorts, for as long as it lasts, where you don't even realize how deep and dark that rabbit hole truly is that you're in, until that a glimmer of light shines on you, usually in your failure or in some failed circumstance that enlightens you all of a sudden, gives you fresh inspiration, but not the kind that you know that that enlivens you, but the kind that kind of depresses you in a sense. Like, damn, this is who I am, this is who I've been, this is what I've done, this is who is affected, this is how I'm affected, this is the consequence, this is the outcome, this is the result, as if none of that ever dawned on you before. And maybe it didn't, maybe it absolutely didn't, because that's just the nature of that. That's just the clever trickery of that lower force to make you see nothing but what's in it for you, until you realize that was just a lie and an illusion, or temporary at best. And not to make it about this, but I just watched the Summer House final, part 3 of the reunion. And it kind of, as I'm speaking on this, kind of gives that energy coming from Amanda and West now, where it's like in the moment, it just seemed like something so satisfying and it was filling a void for both of them. Now the way they talk about the relationship is so in such uncertain terms. Like, I don't know how it's playing out in social media because I don't follow anybody in those spaces, but the way that the reunion is much more current than the show itself, or when the show taped and aired. The reunion is more or less more real time than all of that stuff before. So it's like you're seeing more currently the fallout, and getting the sense that these two people are kind of like stuck in the pressure of needing to make this work to make it worth it, but that it might not really be so organic or so fluid and fun as it was when it was a sneaky link, pretty much, which is exactly what it ultimately was. But now it's like, oh man, look at the mess that we've made. Look at, all of the bridges that have been burned, the open-ended questions, even about the continuance of their career, their succession on the series, and their relationships, the relationship that they forged, and the relationships that have faltered. And it's like when you were that they kept getting pushback about, what was the plan? Like you guys talked about this, you considered all of the fallout, the consequences, the results that could come from you just going for it, and you still felt like it was worth it. And you can't help who you love, you can't help who you have feelings for, but when you hear the story and then all the other parts around it about how Wes was seeing someone else, and he wasn't even exclusive to her after he pronounced his feelings for her, and she was still married to Kyle and really in a vulnerable place, and Sierra had really, supported her through all of her weakest moments. And it's just like you considered all those points and still said that this very shaky situation, that of which all the odds are against it and the stakes are very high, is still worth taking the chance. And that's just kind of like, not to say that it's devil energy, but like when you're on Wes and Amanda, because I don't want to thrust that on their situation, because they're young, and when you're young and dumb, quote unquote, as far as I'm concerned, they're young. They're younger than me, and in my 30s, I was making choices that, weren't necessarily ones that I would make now, knowing better and being equipped and wiser to do better. But it's still like, a consideration in real time, like in popular culture, how you can just, as Wes said, get carried away. You know what I mean? Which is even a poor choice of term to express something that should just be better said to have gotten serious, but to this got carried away almost implies that at this, it became more than what it was intended to be, and perhaps has become more than what you even care to manage, which has a certain implication, again, leading back to, was it all worth it? So I don't know, I just had to throw that out there because it was coming up for me. But I feel like a lot of energies that are kind of, like I said, looking at the mess that they made now, coming to their senses, consciously much more aware and awake to the reality of their present moment, or the present, however you want to say it, is you can't help but feel maybe a little bit sorry, or at least a bit regretful for how it's all turned out. Maybe, perhaps not so much, because, I'm sure Amanda is probably not thrilled about the state of her relationship with Sierra at this time, and having to be on the brunt end of her wrath, and social media having its way with her too. Same for Wes, because they're two people pleasing energies, generally speaking. But it still didn't, the sorrowfulness is not so much on account of, man, I really hurt my friend, holistically, because if that was the foresight, you wouldn't have taken the action in the first place. It's more a selfish observation and implication of sorrow, and regret, because of how it's affecting her and how it's affecting him, and most times how it's affecting the people that have, for all other, intents and purposes, meant to cause disruption outside of themselves. They never really wanted to experience the backlash or the backfire that they're ultimately incurring, and especially on account of the fact that it seems to be overshadowing the satisfaction that they initially experienced, or at least intended to have in the end. That's really the motivation behind any regret or remorse, which is why, like I said, this is a proper position, like to almost be objectively indifferent at the Two of Swords. Like, yeah, I hear you, or I sounds good, or maybe even I accept and I understand, but your auric field, whomever relates to that position, still gets to be protected to the most secure max that you possibly can, especially where there's emotions and psychological well-being involved. And when we're talking about matters of the heart, love, intimacy, or people, places, things that you trusted yourself with, or trusted yourself in the presence of, Hell yeah. It's only reasonable to still maintain a healthy boundary and a reasonable distance, I would say. And maybe you might not even be one that wants to hear the I sorries or hear someone's excuses or explanations or whatever, and you would be well within your right for that too. You don't have to, you don't, closure is, for closure to be achieved for a person on a Two of Swords, and it's a personal resolve and understanding and release more than it is needing to hear what anyone has to say about how they made you feel or what they meant to do or what was intended or whatever. You don't really even need that. It might be nice in some scenarios and situations, but it's not necessary, and and sometimes it can actually complicate things, because which I feel like the lower frequency of all of this would be to be manipulative in a way to make you question or second guess how you perceived a situation, to ultimately grant some absolution, again, for someone else's benefit, but that doesn't really necessarily benefit you, you know? So, I don't know. I feel like giving up, this was channeled to me almost like, the art of war in a sense, and there being a certain victory or glory that has been achieved on account of just maintaining your personal innocence and your integrity, protecting your peace, just being who you are, and not only being tactical in your response, and maybe even not retaliating at all, but just being tactical and being on the ready pretty much to follow your instincts of how you need to protect yourself more, or respond as necessary when necessary. Like the magician and the manifestation and inspiration, which is the magician and the Ace of Wands, says that somebody really was quite empowered, not just in their readiness, like I said, like to protect themselves and to be in a position to enact, like proactively secure your sacred space, but it also speaks to having like masterful instincts to know exactly how to respond or not in an instant, And so with that, all of that energy, all of that power in your possession, you wouldn't want to put that on the line on account of just being nice, or feeling obligated to hear someone out or consider all angles, when someone's actions and intentions have really given you all of the intel that you really need to know. What more do you need? It doesn't matter how someone feels after the fact. It's about the sheer audacity to advance in the way that they did in the first place. Like I said, considering all angles, observing their target, surveying the land and the territory, projecting the outcome, the casualty of their advancement, and still saying, attack anyway. You know what I mean? Like, charge anyway. I'm going to do it. I don't, like having no regard for everything, even though it was misinformed, but still with the information they had, the only thing that they were off on is just how powerful and resilient you were to not only absorb the advance and the attack, but to stand your ground, and to protect your boundaries and protect your space, your territory, and to recover in times when that was necessary too. That was the underestimation. Otherwise, the point for you was ultimate transformation, if you feel me. Death to your emotions, your success, your glory, as a star, like your star power, your destiny, your abilities to create and manifest, bring things to life, to bring stagnancy to your inspiration, confusion to your instincts, like that was the intention here, to cause things to not accelerate, but to come to a full stop, or at least slow down at the very least. So it's like, and for you to have to retreat and recoil into yourself. So with all of that intention on the advance, how could you even justify, even under demonic possession, because you got to be a weak ass vessel to allow yourself to be completely overtaken by a foreign imposition that at your core, because we all do, is not akin to your natural being. So that in itself was the power of choice activated, initiated, and asserted. So you don't get no pass for that. You allowed yourself to wallow in dark spaces too long and ultimately became consumed by dark forces, or from the inside out, that darkness taken over, but that was still within your power of choice. So there's no remorse, or not remorse, but sympathy, and certainly no empathy. Cannot relate for that. So therefore, it's like, what is there to hear out? What is there to understand? What is there to consider? What is there to be sorry, feel sympathetic for? Exactly. Like I said, I spent all that time saying what ultimately has become obvious, that this person is not sorry. If they're retreating, to their own detriment, let me say this as a precursor, but if they're retreating, it's only to figure out how to advance again, how to come up with a new point of attack, a new way. And even if that is by way of apology, or trying to now soften their approach, it's still not sincere, and it's not for any productive purposes other than to satisfy their own selfish agenda, period. And we know with the Seven of Swords that it's far more sinister than that usually. And they're definitely, with this as well, going to lie or leave some information out. So the way that they're going to look to manipulate the circumstances, or manipulate the energy that they're projecting on, is not even going to be with truth. Is going to be some type of twisted narrative, or that wasn't me, that was such and such, blame shifting, or this is the real reason why. It's not going to be it's not going to be honest. And even if they're not being honest with themselves, that's still a projection that now becomes your now has an effect on your force field, and that could be tactical in itself. Like I said, to confuse you and make you think, well, man, maybe I was being a little too harsh. Maybe I wasn't being reasonable. Yes, you were. Yes, you are. You don't owe anything to anyone but to continue to protect your peace and your own power. Yeah, because they're going to stand on them lies. They're going to build a whole monument on them. And then that thing's going to come crack. The hope is for it to come crashing down right on top of your head and put you in a place where you can't even trust yourself, can't even trust your boundaries, your foundation anymore. Which leaves a crack open for maybe them, but at least for someone else to come and do some to further the obliteration, or to exact it in a way that it makes you attractive for someone else to then come in and start that cycle of deception all over again. And that's just not what you need. You need to continue moving forward in the power that you have ultimately curated on account of this contention, which is the best part about it. You got to see, like I said before, your own power in action being revealed and activated in ways that you may have had no idea you possessed. Why would you want to surrender that, especially to an enemy force that has already exposed itself and has already exposed its motives and its tactics to you? Like, it's shown its hand, its playbook. It's like you a fly on the wall of their war room, and you know exactly what moves they're going to make before they even make them, which is what continues to send them on retreat back to the drawing board, because it's like, damn, all right, let me go think of something else. Like, oh shit, she know that one too. All right, man, let me figure something out. And they each time try to become more and more clever, which, like I said, to their own detriment, because just the sheer intention to operate in that frequency at this point in time is, you're really, you're creating your own self-destruction. It's a personal attack at this point. Yeah, it's the past. Trying to recycle the past, trying to bring back that era of innocence when, you were unarmed, caring, trusting, maybe even a bit naive, not in a, an offensive way, but like I said, because when you you think about it, when you find, or you think you found, a safe space to be, whether that's with a person, a place, or thing, I guess, perhaps, and you feel, and your security in that space has been confirmed, at least enough for you to breathe or let your hair down or whatever, be yourself. You're not really on guard for reasons why that should change. Like, I'm probably not saying that well, but like I said, it's not until it's abundantly evident and clear to you that something is not secure and as safe as it seemed to be, that you begin to take a step back, disassociate, disconnect, create space, protect yourself, create boundaries. You're not doing that when you're in the midst of it and everything feels like, you're okay to be here. You're in a place that's not threatening, not violent, not, that's honest, that's true, that's trustworthy. And that's what someone would want to bring back the spirit of within you or within a circumstance, just so they can stomp all over it with their dirty shoes again. They can't do that when you're on guard and when you're resistant and you're like, no, you're not welcome here, or no, I don't want to hear what you have to say, or I've seen all I need to see, I know all that I need to know, or I don't need closure, like, we're good, I'm happy where I'm at and you're good where you at. No, they want to draw you back in, or be able to create a safe space, for a crack for them to get back in, so that you can either feel sorry again, feel safe again, or reconsider, like almost have a yearning for the safe space that once was created at a time. Because let's just face it, there aren't many places like that for a human to retreat. And when you find it, you do cling on to it, and a lot of times, you do sometimes even ignore the signs and signals that maybe something ain't so cool here, or maybe I need to, protect myself or do something different. Maybe not tell them all my business, or not feel like they can do no wrong, or I could trust them with my life, or though they would never do that. There aren't a lot of places like that. For some, they may never find a safe place where you don't feel like you have to protect your front and your back at all costs, at all times. So when you find that, you cling to it, and you probably revel in it much longer than what you should, even when there are signs that you shouldn't. And you might even be susceptible to wanting to recreate that familiarity as it is with the Six of Cups. Even when you've been given evidence that it never even existed, let alone is something that can be recreated. But I feel like I said, for every advance or new attempt that can be made, the maintenance here is to be indifferent, to not be so emotionally driven, to be objective, and considerate of how far you've come. And at this point, now having an elevated esteem of self on account of all you've encountered and sustained and, survived and revived from, to know that you not only do you deserve something that aligns with who you are at your core and how you've evolved, but that it's actually possible. It may be rare, but that just makes it that much more special to hold out for, because it is rare. And so you don't have to settle for less, for something that has already proven that it's nowhere near that, and never even had an intention to be, you know. So let me get a couple more, because obviously I'm a little long-winded today. Oh, with the Temperance, my God. Well, like I said, it is possible. It's supreme. It's rare. It's an anomaly to some, especially to those that have not been tried by fire to become self-aware of just how special they are. Because, like, you kind of have to get to that point, your own transformation, first, which situations such as this do actually support, and even accelerate to some degree, where you wouldn't have done it for yourself because you may have stayed safe in false, secure situations, or with a sense of false security. But here is actual security, actual balance, actual harmony, healed, a healed reality, a healed experience, where two cups are equally yoked, are equally fluid. Imagine the two of cups, being those two cups in the Temperance card, where, like I said, you find that perfect alignment, that ideal match, that sacred space, that sacred connection and commitment that does give to you what you give. Maybe even there's an outpouring of extravagance even unto another, where y'all can't outdo each other. As a matter of fact, it's like you take turns wanting to exceed the other's expectations. Wow, I love that. Like you love someone, you care about someone so much, and you feel so safe to love and be loved, that you go through, I don't know, like exponential lengths to express that, not just because you can, but because you're given, again, the safe space to do so in a way that you never really were before. Even when you thought you were, there's something built in, like a fail safe, that keeps you from being to fully outpouring from yourself. And that's the divine, like as a protective measure. So it's like when you get, like I said, almost falling over each other to outdo the other, it's because like there's so much built up on reserve that you weren't able to pour out freely. Like there wasn't a fluidity before. There was always something to kind of start the flow when you really think about it, when you consider even people that you wanted to dote on and give yourself to completely and, fully be vulnerable to. There was always something, whether it was the other person's behavior or some inkling within you, there was always something that kept you from fully releasing. But the Temperance is just like a perfect balance, a perfect flow, a relentless flow of energy that is like, what's the word? Like self-sustainable. Like you never feel depleted in a situation such as this because it's naturally replenishing. You know, so that person's replenishing you, you're replenishing them, and on and on and on till y'all are ace of cups together and just drowning in love happily, you know. And that's the type of love I'm here for. Nothing less. Nothing less. If there's anything more, hell, I'm here for that too, but certainly nothing less. So it wouldn't even be consider a consideration to entertain someone that has already shown their limitation in love. It doesn't matter how they've grown or evolved at a certain point, especially after so much has been done and has transpired. It's good. It would be good for them to have learned the error of their ways or where there's room for growth. But what's in it for me? You know, and that's what you get to say, like really to yourself. Like honestly, what's in it for me to reconsider this point of position that I've been able to maintain for so long until there's something or someone that convinces me to safely, you know, literally open my gates, raise my walls, you know what I'm saying? Like, and we could even be talking about sexual energy here, especially with the temperance being like self-control and things like that. And yeah, like self-control and deep consideration of who you manifest with in spirit or in flesh, with the manifestation, the magician and the ace of wands. You being very sure as a star energy with accelerate on the table, like you, whatever you align your energy with at this point in time, not only is this historically true, but is absolutely true at this point, is bound to excel in some way, shape, or form. And the key is knowing like who's in it exactly just for that opportunistic purpose, you know, to come get a little sip of your cup and, you know, juice up, boost up, and be out. Or who's here, who's coming in to actually share in this exchange with you, to vitalize you just as much as you vitalize them, so y'all can both excel to the next stratosphere together. Maybe actually, okay? Yeah, that's rare. It's special. It's sacred. It's anointed. It's appointed. It's not for everybody and everybody ain't for it. It can be within your own right if you're willing to pursue the acquisition of your own special someone and circumstance or ideal situation that is assigned to you, and to align yourself with the frequency of that experience. But those in the Seven of Swords and, you know, just trying to get ahead no matter the consequence or the casualty, no. It's not going to advance any more than I believe Wes and Amanda's relationship will last to the next season of Summer House, if they even make it on there. Like, it's just not. It's not built to last. It's not built on anything solid. And they're most likely someone else's person, just taking up space with one another because it just feels good right now. Or like I said, things got carried away and now you feel stuck. That ain't the temperance. That's not a magnitude of temperance. And so it's not going to have the outcome or the result and reward. What's the word? Not just self-control, like abstinence. Yeah, because I was saying earlier, knowing when to advance or when to retaliate or whatever, and when to, abstain or to hold your position, to stand your ground. That's that energy there. Certainly in relationships, and the temperance also speaks to not just blanketly saying all men are this or all women are that, or no, love is a sham, or I hate love, or I don't want love, or relationships are this and that, like making what happened in one season of your life, or maybe in multiple seasons, or maybe over multiple lifetimes, true overall. That's an act of temperance as well, when you can abstain from that illusion, because that's the work of an enemy force as well, to have you lose hope for what is especially due to you and what you're deserving of, even if it does seem rare or almost seem like an impossibility, and certainly an uncertainty, given your past experience. It's being able, Ace of Swords, there's something under here though, so I might not take this. Oh my gosh, the Lovers, and is that the Empress again? Oh my goodness. I'm gonna just leave this right here because I just can't put that back. That's that on that. That's the real love, not the illusion, or the nostalgia, and the what felt good at a time. Yeah, five of swords here. Yeah, like it's an overcoming here. Like, and this is the energy once again that is obstinate to balance and temperance and harmony, that, as I said, is just proven itself even in the cards not to be worthy of a reconsideration, and certainly not to be underestimated either. I feel compelled to say that as well. But this is not just love for nostalgia's sake, or familiarity, or whatever, formality. This is like pure, what you deserve, knowing that you deserve the highest, the most supreme exchange of love due to an Empress, the highest queen in the deck, and the divine affirming that with the Ace of Swords. Like, yes, this is in the cards for you. And you had to believe it first, because I could go in on that, but you had to come to that realization, that awareness, and that certainty first, before it could resonate as truth, in a way that the truth that ultimately sustained this position, which was the protective force in itself, that made your force field virtually impenetrable, because you found an alignment with the truth that is irrefutable, which is your most supreme identity. And when you know who you are on a supreme level, you would be insane to entertain anything less. You would have to be. Because an Empress is not entertaining a knight. Not really. Maybe to guard my castle, certainly not entertaining a page, unless you're her child, a dependent of sorts. And a king is even a little questionable, So it's again that supreme self-esteem activated and asserted in a way that is aggressive in a sense, because it kind of is an assault to those that would want to either test that, try that, challenge it, or, as I said, have underestimated it, that think you that's still that little insecure little girl that just wants to be loved and accepted and coddled and embraced, and so on and so forth, or where you've evolved to the point where you've learned how to give everything you've ever wanted and desired to yourself first and foremost. And if that's where the buck stops, so be it. standing your ground on the fact that you will never relent to less than what you know you deserve, or surrender to a lesser force, because it's unnecessary to do so. That you are enough within yourself if nothing else comes along. And of course, this is not the case, I don't believe, really, for anyone, unless this is what you desire. You'd rather be alone in your own glory, than to be miserable or even just partially, barely satisfied sharing a spotlight with someone else, let alone having to dim your spotlight just to be with someone else. It's not happening. We both shine together, or I'll be over here and you can find your own shine wherever you can get it, if you can. But those that know from observation and even from experience how illuminating your special light can be. And like I said, they either want to contribute, add value to that, polish that, brighten that light, or they want to detract it, deflect it, perhaps onto themselves, or dim it altogether, so that nobody can have it or see it if they can't. That even might be the distant, and people can do that by way of lies, like I said, twisting narratives or spinning narratives, as they say, whatever, especially with lies or gossip, or like deflecting a certain negative light onto you, so that becomes, that somehow taints the natural light that you have. But that energy even is defeated. It can't, it has to figure out, because even if someone is successful to do that unbeknownst to you, in their own time, in their own, corner of the world, or whatever their tactic is, for someone that already knows who they are, it really doesn't matter what other people believe about you, even if it's false. It doesn't matter what gossip people get swept into, or what narratives are being portrayed about you. When you know who you are, you know your intentions, you know your heart, you know your experiences are valid, you know your energy is pure, you know you are self-contained. Look at this monitoring ass spirit, this little gnat. Yeah. And all monitoring spirits and projectors, better retreat, or you're gonna get stuck in the astral. And that's going to look like psychosis on your end. You don't want to fuck around with the fuck around right now. And that's just a warning to the wise with the star. Okay? Like I said, and that's the star now coming out twice. Undefeated. Divine destiny is undefeated. If it didn't realize itself in this lifetime, it would for sure in the next and the one after. But it's inconquerable and it's undefeated. So try as they may, try as they have, try as they will, each and every time, each and every lifetime, every age, every existence, every dimension, every reality, there's still going to be left with no other choice but to retreat and ultimately concede to transformation one way or another. There's the Ace of Cups. What's on the bottom of this? What the freaking, oh my gosh. Retreat while you can. Put down your weapons. And as far as we're concerned, this never happened. Yeah. Now, what the divine has to say about that is a whole nother story. But as far as we're concerned, those of us on the end of just, humbly protecting our own space, our own righteous path, our own will, our own energy. This never happened. You go your way, we'll go ours. And hell, go in grace. Why don't you? Peace be with you, indeed. No hurt, harm, or injury or ill will from this end. Wish you nothing but the best, for real, for real. But it's transformation at all costs, one way or another. Either going to change or else. So, thank you for listening. As for me and my house, we gonna be in love. And that's where we're gonna stay from now until eternity. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.